All right, we are now at 10.0, the superintendent's report, and so I'm going to yield to Dr. Little to discuss these items.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Certainly a number of things to report on tonight. Looking forward to hearing about the College Center update from Mr. Baskett here in just a moment, as well as the summer recovery programs and what that looks like overall in the CARES Act funding. But before we do that, I do want to just remind the board that prior to spring break, we made the announcement that we will begin phasing out the plexiglass as a portion of our mitigation strategies beginning on April the 19th. That is next week. And we had a great meeting yesterday with our principals about what that looks like. Our principals will have autonomy about how that phasing out goes, depending on the community and the schools. And if you have a concern, for example, if a teacher's concerned about removing the plexiglass, we can certainly work with that teacher to determine what that might look like. But so the principals will be communicating with their parents and students over the next week or so to talk about what that phase out will begin. But we are phasing that out. You'll notice the CDC did talk about barriers. So we will also be phasing out the plexiglass here in the boardroom, although I do like the nice little wooden panels, but we are going to be phasing out plexiglass here as well to comply with that. And so that's kind of our big movement this week. And as we thankfully start getting more and more back to normal, we continue to encourage our community to vaccinate and to continue to help us move forward and get back to normal. So that will be very exciting. Now I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Brandon Baskett to give us an update on the College Center. There's been a lot of action you saw tonight with Dr. Cooke and Dr. Henson coming to talk about that Midlands Tech partnership. And because of that partnership, there's been some change at the College Center that we want to make sure that the school board is up to date on.
Thank you, Dr. Little, and good evening to Madam Chair and the members of the board. So for the College Center, we have a lot of exciting things going on. It's been a very busy spring for us. I will echo just a little bit some of what Dr. Cooke and Dr. Rivers already mentioned, and Dr. Henson. So we did begin a pilot program in Lexington District One this spring, which included some early graduates who decided to stay with us. And the cool thing about that is we are able to help them launch their college career. Many of them, that might have been the first college course they've taken. And so maybe there's a little bit of fear and hesitancy that, hey, maybe I'm not college material. But because they were able to try those courses with our support, and also with the technology that the district provides with the MacBooks, we're able to support them at the beginning of their college career, which may make them more likely to be successful. So I'm very excited about the work we've been able to do with that. And you see the number of courses that students are taking across the district. One thing that's been very helpful is we're trying to, and we have, revised and refined the application process. Sometimes you do some applications online, sometimes you do it on paper. We're just trying to make it as simple as possible, because if there are obstacles and barriers for students to apply for dual enrollment, they may say, you know what, this is too much for me. I knew college wasn't for me, I'm not gonna do it. So we're trying to make it as simple as possible to improve our equitable practices with finding as many students as we can who are eligible for dual enrollment. And then right now, course requests are ongoing with each of the 5 high schools, with Lexington Technology Center, and also the Lexington Online Learning Academy, which is our virtual academy. Very exciting point at the end there is that our College Center students, you may often see abbreviated as TCC, the College Center. They will begin their journey to associate degrees starting next year as sophomores. So I just wanted to give you a brief synopsis of what was already covered, but just wanted to echo that. And so our students are doing some great things right now. This year we had 17 students. One unfortunately had to move away. They were very sad to have to move. They loved the program and they missed their peers. Our students are doing very well. So that is a weighted GPA you see there. The average is about a 4.05. Of the attempted credits, 82%, which is about 14 out of 17, have earned all of the credits they've attempted. This is very great progress for some of our students who maybe have overcome some fear about, am I a good student? And because we've had this smaller community in this cohort where they work together with the support of AVID, they've been able to prove to themselves and their family that, hey, I can do more than what I've been doing in the past. They are doing virtual college tours. They actually, my students toured Duke University today. When we are able to travel at some point, we will do some local college tours in person. So that's in the works. But in the time being, we are doing virtual college tours. They're doing it about weekly or bi-weekly. Some of the schools they visited, Clemson was a live virtual tour. We were able to schedule a tour with them They were able to kind of talk us through what Clemson University was like, and we even talked about some transferability of those dual enrollment courses that the students will take in a few years, starting next year, actually. The recruitment and interview process was a blast. We've interviewed over 100 students, which was time-consuming, but it was so cool because we got a chance to learn more about the amazing students across this district. We heard some great stories of success and triumph. We also heard how they've overcome adversity, and we were able to learn more about their dreams and how they thought the College Center could help them realize their dreams. So I got to meet a lot of people, myself and some teachers. We do have a projected enrollment of 100 students, and most of that is confirmed. So our students had to respond to a survey to say, yes, I've been accepted, but I do intend to participate, which helps us with planning for the high schools. So every student has a base school. So you may be a Lexington High School student, so you're from Beechwood, you're gonna go to Lexington High School. Lexington High School, we work together and collaborate to make sure the schedule's set, but Lexington remains their base school, even though they're at the College Center at Gilbert High School all day for their high school career. Of course, when you go from 17 students to 100, you're close to a 500% increase. So that will probably bounce out just a little bit next year. It won't be as high, but we still plan to increase that every year. This year we accepted rising freshmen and rising sophomores. Because we know we missed some students last year with the difficulty of recruiting from home with Zoom. We were just learning how to use Zoom. And so this year we wanted to make sure we gave them an opportunity, because it is better to start in the 9th grade so that you can progress through the course sequence and not try to catch up as a rising sophomore. So what is AVID? AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. It is a college and career readiness framework that we work through in AVID. So my students have an AVID elective course that is required year 1 through 4, year 9 through 12, and it's AVID 1 through 4 for each year. They're working on how to become better writers, how to use inquiry, how to collaborate with their peers, how to become more organized, which is very critical. Because if you're learning information, but you can't find where you put things and you don't know how to apply it, you're gonna be lost. And you just have a whole bunch of notes everywhere, so we're teaching them focused note-taking skills. They use things like 2-column notes, 3-column notes, Cornell notes, and we're teaching them to use the strategies that work best for them so that they can, and then at the bottom, you're synthesizing what you learn, and you're asking questions. You're not just taking notes for the sake of taking notes. You're taking notes for the sake of using them and applying them and really understanding and grasping the material. And AVID, it's a worthy investment for our students. It's not just paying for a program. This is what we're investing in. So I love this picture. I put this collage together. This is not all of our students are pictured. These are just the ones who submitted pictures last year, but you see students from across the district, their smiling faces. So we're investing in these smiling faces. So this is these are my current students, 9 of the 17. And we're also investing in our new students. These are some of the students who are coming to us next year from across the district. We actually have representation from all 13, 8 middle schools and 5 high schools, which is pretty exciting. We did not have representation from all of the schools and feeder patterns last year, so I'm really excited about that. And of course, this is not all of the 80 plus we've accepted this year. These are the ones who have submitted photos, who have said, yes, I want you to share my photo. So if you don't follow us, we're on social media, on Twitter, and we share these on Twitter and Facebook. And here, this is a family. These are 2 cousins who found out they got accepted on the same day, and they were so excited. They emailed me, said, we went out to dinner and we took this picture. Please share this picture. So I was very excited to include this picture as well. And so how are we going to get our students to this associate degree with Midlands Technical College? That's our partner. And we also use AVID as a vehicle to get there. This may look like a lot. I spent a lot of time this year trying to revise this and make sure it works. And it's still not a final copy, which is what says draft there. But some things that, some myths that we want to dispel is that, is the College Center or is AVID an at-risk program? And it's not. The College Center is for students who are in the academic middle, who they've demonstrated that they can do the work, but they're not really performing to their greatest potential. So what we're doing is we're using AVID as a vehicle to get them to realize their greatest potential and to take advanced courses. So you see honors there, you see some AP, so advanced placement classes, you see dual enrollment classes with Midlands Technical College. We're working to get them an associate's degree in high school for free. Many of my students are first-generation college students, so they'll be the first to maybe even attend college and graduate from college. And think about how awesome it is for some of them to be able, and hopefully all of them, to be able to get a high school diploma and a college degree in basically at the same time. And actually, they're going to graduate from college before they graduate from high school, because the college graduation is going to be in May, and then the high school graduation is typically in June. So that's really exciting. I've learned that some of my students are also going to be the first to actually graduate from high school. So we have a mixture of students. We have some who are first generation. We have some who are continuing the family legacy. Fathers who are engineers and mothers who are doctors. So it's not an at-risk program. We have a very diverse group that I have the pleasure of working with every single day. And so as I thought about all the things that we've been doing throughout this last year, I was hired last year in February 2020. I had no idea where we'd be, in another year. And so as I think about it, I can say with certainty that because of the great families I have the opportunity and privilege to work with, I know that we are, in fact, empowering these children to design the future. And I am grateful to have that opportunity to lead this program. And at this time, I'll take any questions.
Let me add real quick, so before questions, if you don't mind, will you talk about the change, because we've really enjoyed our partnership with USC Sumter. There was a change that had to take place because of some state level stuff, the Commission of Higher Education. Can you talk about how the schedule changed as we moved to MTC as opposed to what it was initially?
Sure, and I'll go back to the schedule as we talk about it. So in the beginning of this, when the program was beginning to develop last year, we had a thought that we were going to be able to offer maybe about half of an associate's degree through USC Sumter. But because of some of those challenges and not being able to do that, we learned that Midlands Tech was going to be our best partner to realize this goal. And so we did shift the schedule. We pulled some things forward, and it's a pretty rigorous schedule. If you look at it, you see honors courses. They're taking Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 honors in the same year, Biology 1 honors, and then Advanced Placement Human Geography, English 2 honors. So I mean, there's a lot of coursework that our students are having to do. So we had to rearrange the schedule to figure out how can we fit all of these credit hours, 60 plus credit hours, into a 4-year high school schedule. So you might note that notice that there are some summer courses planned for that freshman summer coming into your freshman year, or sophomore summer going into that year, because some students may come to us without having English 1 honors completed from middle school, and that's okay, because we're going to give you the opportunity. We've created a course. We use Edgenuity, and we have a teacher who actually helps me facilitate that. We did it last summer to make sure we can get students prepared for that next year. And for those rising sophomores who are coming to me, not all of them will have all of those courses completed from that freshman course sequence. And we're going to work with them to make sure they have the time. So you might see in there some extended learning time. I've done research on early colleges, not just across the state, but across the Southeast and really the nation, to learn more about how we can prepare our students to earn an associate's degree. And so I'm trying to make sure that we don't overload them, but we also provide them with the time and resources to be successful. And so the schedule certainly has shifted a lot. And towards the junior and senior year, and research shows this as well, we want students to be able to step foot on the college campus so they can understand what the college environment is like. They know how to navigate it, and they're not just doing it alone. We're still here to support them. And so that's going to increase the likelihood that they're successful. So hopefully I've answered your question or talked enough to that, Dr. Wu.
Well, I have a question. Have you heard from any of the people who have wanted to apply that they've considered not applying because from the schedule I'm seeing, there's no arts, it's all academics, and it's intense academics.
Yes, so there's a little space depending on what you come to us with. So for example, students who already have Algebra 1 honors completed by the time they come to me at the freshman year, that's an additional block they can use to take some of the arts. But in most early colleges, that's understood that because you're making the decision like, hey, we want to be able to focus on the academics, we're okay, as a family, we're making a decision, we're okay with not having the arts, or maybe not being able to compete in sports the way we may have in the past. And so we do have those conversations with families. And families ask those questions before they commit and say, yes, I'm going to come to the College Center. They'll ask, how will this work if my student was supposed to go to, or they're zoned to go to White Knoll High School or to River Bluff High School? And we walk them through those, we have those questions they have. We walk them through the situations and scenarios, and also collaborate with either the counselors or the administrators at that school and say, hey, this parent has this concern. Can we work together on answering these questions for them? And I want them to make an informed decision. I would never want to sacrifice a student's quality of education for the sake of me having numbers. I want to make sure that it's something that's beneficial for them, and if it's not, I'm going to be honest with them and say, hey, you can still get dual enrollment and advanced coursework at your high school. Here's how you can do that. You may not be able to earn the associate's degree, but you can get pretty close to it, and you can still, do those things that you're interested in. And some people had concerns about, like cheerleading. I can't do the class during the day that prepares me, and that's totally understood, but you can still get the dual enrollment at White Knoll High School. So those questions do come up and those concerns do come up, and we work together between me and the high school to help that family.
And all these students are on the same campus at Gilbert High School?
Yes,
Okay.
and they're with us all day. So we have transportation. I work with Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Kurtz to get transportation so that they can be transported with a shuttle from their base school in the mornings to Gilbert High School. They're with us all day, and at the end of the day, they're transported back to their base school. Or parents can bring them and pick them up if they like to.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So I've learned to repeat things. We had 17 kids in this first class that were all freshmen.
Yes.
And, well, originally 18, but one had to move out. So we have 17 going up to the sophomore class, correct?
We had 17, one moved, so we're at 16.
Okay,
now.
16.
She recently moved.
And then the incoming class for 21, 22 is how many kids you said?
We're right around 80 confirmed, and
Okay.
some I'm following up to just say, hey, have you made your decision? The sooner the better, so we can work with the counseling departments at each of the schools and say, hey, this student's gonna be coming to us, and working with them to get their schedule courses selected.
And some of them will be sophomores, right? Is what
We
you-
will have about 35 new sophomores joining the 16 that are moving up.
So it's about 45 and 45 in the freshman and sophomore class,
Just
round
about.
numbers.
50-ish,
Or 50,
once they get they confirm, yes.
Okay, cool.
How are we getting the word out to parents on this, so we can
Yes.
get more people involved, more people signing up?
Yeah, great question. We use social media, work with the communications department with Mary Beth Hill and Catherine McPhail. I've analyzed data, so we have access to, thanks to Dr. Phillips' office, we have access to data from academic data for students. And so based on the AVID criteria, looking at students who perform in the middle for the SC Ready, SC Pass in middle school, the also Star 360 data, I've been able to identify a list of qualified candidates across the district. What I did there was I went and we used PowerSchool to pull their contact information. So each family was contacted, said, hey, your child is eligible to apply. We encourage you to do so. And then we also had a video that we were able to make. Rob Starkey helped us make that video. It was a fantastic video where we were able to talk to some students. I talked a little bit. I don't want too much shine. I want my kids to talk about it and the teachers to talk about it. So that the peers, their students can hear from other peers. They don't want to hear from adults all the time. Like, you guys haven't been in school in 100 years. I want to talk to people who are actually going through this. And so another cool thing is I had one family who had some more questions than the child's at actually Pleasant Hill Middle School. She said, hey, can I talk to some other students? So we actually used technology, a software called Flipgrid, where we recorded, she sent in her questions, and then we sent those questions to the students, and they were my current students, and they recorded the answers to it. We sent it back to her, and she was able to feel more comfortable, and she confirmed that she was gonna come. So we're doing as much as we can to get the word out, to inform people, and I know that we'll have even more awareness, and we'll increase awareness for our next school year.
Good, good. I think that your enthusiasm in implementing all of this and getting it started is as exciting as the program itself. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Mr. Baskett, this is Jada. Thank you. I have a question about traveling to Midlands Technical College. I know you said they wanted to get the college experience. That, to me, that's just a lot of traveling. I'm wondering, are y'all doing that because you want to give them a college experience or because those courses are only offered at Midlands Tech?
That's a great question. It's a combination of space at Gilbert High School and trying to figure out how we can make this work on the campus with Gilbert's growing, their actual growing community enrollment. And so based on having a cohort of 50 students for 9th grade and 10th grade, and once they get to that junior year, we have to figure out where to put those, where can you put those teachers, where can you put the students? And that's also a challenge. So we felt that one thing that could work, and it may change, we're not sure yet, is that them going to the campus is they'll be there, maybe, those courses are maybe a little over an hour each. So they'll travel, they'll have Avid in the morning, they'll travel, take their courses, and then come back. And that's kind of common with early colleges. One that's local to us is Lexington 2. They do something similar to that, where they're able to travel from their, they actually house their early college at almost like LTC. They house it there, and they travel to MTC's, I think their airport campus, and then they eventually come back and get back to their base school. So it's a little different, but we're just trying to find the best ways to make use of the space that we do have, and to, the freshmen and sophomores, have them on campus, and then eventually get them to Midlands Tech. But if you look in the sophomore year, they're taking college classes next year too. Some of those may end up being, Midlands, they differentiate between virtual and online. Virtual means that it's synchronous, so they have to sign in on a particular time, and then online is asynchronous, which means that we can be flexible in when they take that class, but it's more self-paced. So we're just trying to be as creative as possible to make it work with the staffing that we have and the space that we have at Gilbert High School.
Okay, thank you. Another thing, I know you said the students stay at their home school basically to graduate, and that's where they're recognized. But if they wanted to participate in athletics and basically become a part of Gilbert High School, is that something that they're allowed to do?
We have had a situation this year, and so it has to, based on high school league rules, it has to be a full transfer to that school, and then it's possible for them to participate at Gilbert High School. I don't know if Mr. Caldwell wants to add anything to that, but we were able to work out that situation earlier this year. And we wanted to make sure we were doing things right by South Carolina High School League rules, and we didn't want students to lose eligibility if they did something they weren't supposed to do.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Baskett. Nice
Thank
work.
you. Thank you.
The College Center is another labor of love that we were able to accomplish, and it's great to see it growing. And like much of our dual enrollment, it is one of those things that people are very excited about. Again, you went from 17 students with some challenges to recruit during the pandemic to now we're going to have 100 students, perhaps as much as 50-50 in each grade level, and growing. So they, again, to have over 100 applicants was pretty exciting in that as well. All right, Dr. Rivers is going to give us an update on graduation as we move forward. I know there's maybe some questions regarding that. So Dr. Rivers, kind of walk us through the thinking and the thought process associated with some of the updates that we have on graduation.
Wish I didn't have to come here to give you an update, but given the arrangements we had with the University of South Carolina's Colonial Life Arena, we had to make some adjustments. Right now, what they have in place is that they're giving 2 tickets to graduates. And majority of the Midland school districts have reserved the Colonial Life Arena for graduation. They have since moved, and we followed suit with those school districts and relocated or moved our graduations to the high school football stadium. So that's kind of been our major change, is just a change in venue, and that gives us an opportunity to give our graduates more tickets. So right now, at our football stadiums, we can give them at least 4 tickets. And so that's a win as we see it. You can have more guests, more people to attend per graduate. If things continue to go well in our community with a low number of COVID numbers, we may be able to increase that, and we're optimistic that we will. So if we get another win of 6 tickets, that'll be great too. So we're going to keep analyzing. We still have time to kind of make that announcement as we see things change in the community. So we're hopeful, crossing our fingers, that we can get to that point of we can give more tickets to our students so they can have more people in attendance. And so what it's going to look like, it's similar to what happened last year, but we have better conditions. And so the graduates are going to be on the football field facing one end zone. And so we'll have all the graduates on the field facing the end zone. We'll have a stage set up, Jumbotron in place, so the guests can be seated on both sides of the bleachers of the stadium, and they'll be socially distanced in pods of 4 or more. So we'll structure so that they'll be in a pod of 4. If we get 4 tickets, if it's 6, we'll give 6 tickets, and then we'll have them in pods in that way throughout the stadium, so they'll sit in their family units and watch the graduation. So we feel very comfortable that that plan will work at all of our stadiums. It's also forcing us to move it from that Saturday, Sunday format that we're used to with the Colonial Life Arena We're inside, we're able to run them 3 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. When we go to the football stadiums, because of South Carolina weather, we can't do it that way. It would not be fun for those that are middle of the day or even at the evening. So the optimal time that we're crossing our fingers on again is at 8 a.m. in the morning for all of our graduations. With 5 high schools, we have to start early enough to get through, especially and also to deal with any kind of inclement weather. So we're starting on Tuesday, June the 8th with Pillion High School at 8 a.m. and then we'll proceed with the other high schools. So Tuesday for Pillion High School on June 8th, Wednesday, June 9th for Gilbert High School. On Thursday, we will have White Knoll High School on June 10th at 8 a.m. in the morning. Friday, June 11th, Lexington High School, and then we'll end on Saturday with River Bluff High School on June 13th, 8 o'clock in the morning, and it will be at each school's football stadium. And so if we have any issues of weather, say Pillion, there's thunderstorms or something in the morning, then Pillion will be moved to that Sunday, and so we'll start the weather makeup days on June 13th. For any school that misses their graduation date, they'll pick up on June 13th, and we'll keep running until we run out of days in the month. And so the idea is to hopefully that 8 o'clock in the morning, less chances of thunderstorms that early. Based on South Carolina weather, we should hopefully have it without any hitches and get through them as best we can. So we've made that switch. We recognize that it is some inconvenience for families who have made plans, but we're hoping they'll be happy with more people in attendance, and that's kind of our objective right now, is to get as many guests in there and to still be socially distanced as much as possible. So that's a quick summary, and hopefully I won't have any other updates for you on changes, but that's, unless the Colonial Life Arena comes back and says, we can give you more tickets, and then we'll just make a grand announcement, but it doesn't look like that's gonna happen. I've been on the phone with them back and forth and talking to the other districts too, and we were all kind of pleading and begging, and they just didn't budge, and so we followed suit with Lexington, Richland 5, and some of the other districts to move it to the stadiums.
Maybe if we had a monster jam during,
Yeah,
we could
we
pack
can
the-
disguise the
yeah,
graduation and have a big event.
But Dr. Rivers, I have to say, so, my daughter graduated last year, and my parents live in Chapin, and when, I have a nephew graduating this year from River Bluff, and when they found out over Easter that his, was gonna be limited to 4 tickets and that they would be watching it online, they were actually quite delighted.
Yeah.
Because last year, they fixed their coffee, they propped back up in their bed, and they watched the live stream, and they said it was the best graduation they'd ever attended.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
So, I mean, you know, there's some good.
Yeah, it's a great
And-
feature.
and
We will
I'll
also
tell
be
you,
doing that.
As a retiree, I can go along with that, you know,
Yeah.
because the way we've got it set up now, just for the record, I get up about 9 o'clock or whenever I feel like it, and so, you know, to be somewhere at 8 in the morning,
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some benefits. We will be live streaming it this year again, and so I recall myself sitting at home and doing the same thing, turning on the computer and watching it last year myself. So we'll do the same thing, and I think we may be able to give students a DVD in that process as well.
And I will say, we made it special last year, and I know y'all will make it again special for these graduates. So I guess as the board, I just want to say thank you.
It will be just as meaningful. Thank you.
I do know that a lot of people do like the aspect that you can watch it virtually, but from what I've heard from a lot of people, I mean, if you think about it, a high school graduation could be a pinnacle moment in a lot of students, a lot of people's lives. And so do you have an idea of when you might know if you're going to be able to increase the tickets? Because from what I've heard from some people, they have family flying in from out of town, and they kind of need to make plans now.
We're going to do it as soon as possible. We had conversations this week. We're looking at numbers in the stadium, what capacity, 50%, 60% capacity. Since we're outside, we have some flexibility, but we also want to make sure that we have enough seats in the pods, socially distanced, that we can do that. So I think in the next week or so, we can land on a number, and if everything stays the way it is right now in the community, we should be fine.
We should be fine to
Increase the number of tickets.
the numbers, okay. And when you have reached out to USC, I mean, I know they're having their graduation, and their graduating classes are a lot bigger than our graduating classes, and I believe last time I checked, they get 5 tickets. So, okay.
They have a variety of graduations in different spaces on campus to spread them out. They are using Colonial Life Arena, but I've not heard how
Yeah.
many tickets
Yeah, they're not all at Williams-Brice.
so they're using different venues to kind
Right.
of spread them out.
There's 5 tickets in the Colonial Life Arena.
Okay.
So. No, it's USC. It's so like, yeah. Well, College of Education. That's where I was going with this. Is
Right.
It might be something in your arsenal to use. if
Mary
you do
Beth,
something
it's
different.
probably Darla Moore.
She's not happy with them right now.
I have, this is Jada. Sorry, I have a question along those lines as well. The smaller schools, such as Pillion and Gilbert, they can already accommodate more than 4 tickets per person. So why do we have one set number of tickets for every school across the district?
Oh, probably because it wouldn't be fair. I mean, I don't know if,
Yeah, but I mean, you can sit in the football stadium, look around and say, this isn't fair. Like, what one school has compared to another school. You know, I mean, there's so many things that aren't fair.
Right. And that's a good question. We had that same
Yeah.
conversation with Colonial Life Arena, and they had that same policy. Because we try to leverage our smaller schools at the time, because it's the large Coliseum, Pillion's graduating class is about 160. They still were kind of saying 2 tickets per graduate just to be fair across the board. So with that in mind, that kind of gave us more information to say, let's go ahead and move it. And we could possibly increase it. We still want to kind of have a balanced approach so that no one feels slighted. So I think the win is if we can get to 6 for all schools, that will still bring us at a particular capacity per stadium that is around 60% or 60 to 70% capacity, which is fine in an outside venue compared to inside, you want to be at 50% capacity.
Okay, thank you. I've just gotten that question several times.
Yes.
And, I mean, if they have the capacity, you know, it's a good question. Why can't they, for once, you know, have something that the other schools can't have based on their size? So, thank you.
Okay. So hopefully this will be my last update on graduation, and we'll have this plan in place. But if something changes, you'll be the first to know.
Those have been famous words for the last year. This has been my last update.
Yeah.
And
All
then
right.
things always
Thank you.
change.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rivers. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Erica Bissell, who is going to walk through our reading, well, she's our reading and language arts coordinator. She's going to walk us through a lot of the summer recovery programs that we have running this summer. What you will notice about this summer is a much more intensive approach for intervention of a number of different groups of students, and what that's going to look like across the board, some virtual and some face-to-face. But this is in response to what has happened this year and trying to make sure that we are continuing to catch up our students as they go along and as the year progresses. So Dr. Bissell, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. So, Dr. Little, we're calling it EPIC. The summer programs are EPIC.
Absolutely. I would not doubt that.
It is the greatest number of programs that we've ever offered over the span of a summer, and also the greatest number of students impacted. So we're very excited about that. Many of you are familiar with our summer reading camp and ESOL camp that we've offered for the past several years. And thanks to state and federal funds, we are now able to offer additional opportunities and again to impact more additional students. And so for each program, I'm going to go through the camp details, the target audience, and the budget and funding source. And then for programs funded by anything related to the CARES Act funds, Mr. Salters is going to go into greater detail in the following me with the CARES budget update. So I'm going to start with the elementary summer programs. And the first one is, we're just going to call it program number 1 for right now. It's Rising First, Second, and Fourth Grade students. And it's Summer Connections. This would be the most similar to what some of our board members would be familiar with as our summer reading camp and ESOL camp that we've offered in years past. But there are some significant changes. One is that this camp will run 4 weeks instead of 6, which we've done in the past. So it'll be a total of 15 face-to-face days, because we have July 5th in there that's kind of messed up our perfect 4 weeks, 4 day schedule, but we have a plan for that. And because our students have had such unique opportunities this year with synchronous and asynchronous experiences, we're going to be able to just keep on rocking and rolling and offer that day as a virtual opportunity, an e-learning day for our students. We will have 5 locations this year rather than just the one camp location, which is how we're going to be able to impact over, we are inviting 1,100 students. Our camp typically has been about 100. So I saw some of my colleagues had the % increase. I didn't calculate that for you, but it's a lot more than we've done in years past. And so we also are able to have a robust daily schedule that is going to include academics and an enrichment period. And so during the morning time, our students, and it'll be a full school day as far as hours go. And that's been something that parents have given us feedback on. It's really hard to find childcare when we were ending camp around noon. Though our teachers really liked it because they enjoyed working camp, but they also enjoyed having some of their summer. So it's kind of a trade-off in that we've decreased the number of weeks, but we're going a full day. So parents, it's kind of families are having a win-win. Our teachers are able to kind of consolidate that time that they're spending over the summer, but our parents have and families have the opportunity for their kids to be with us until 2:30 instead of 12. From 7:30 to 11:30, the academics period will focus on math, reading, and writing. Again, in the past, we've only focused on the literacy aspect, but we are including math this year. And then we'll have a lunch and recess. We are partnering again with food service, so we'll be offering breakfast, lunch, and a snack free of charge to all of our campers. And then in the enrichment period from 12:30 to 2, and I'm sorry, I said 2:30, it's 2, and that is to be able to facilitate a smooth dismissal to transportation to get kids home and on the buses. We will, with 5 sites and 17 schools that we're trying to support, there are some kiddos that will be on the bus a bit longer than others, and so we want to make sure that they're not getting home, you know, any later than 2:30 or 3 o'clock on some of these camp days. And so during the enrichment period, we're partnering with lots of different outside entities to provide virtual field trips and author visits. We also have just started a conversation with AlphaVest, who's one of our community partners, a lot of our elementary schools for after-school care. They're offering an opportunity for our kids to have some, what they call our station rotations that kids experience if they go to an AlphaVest after-school program, and so we're going to partner with them to have some more robust enrichment experiences in the afternoon. So we want it to feel more like camp than like school, but we do have always prided ourselves on having an amazing camp experience for our students. They love coming to camp every day, and so the enrichment is just kind of that additional experience that we're able to offer them in addition to keeping them at their level or increasing their level of proficiency in math, reading, and writing. All right, and so this camp is funded by CARES Act funds as well as state reading camp funds, and each site will have the staff that is listed here. So you can see it is almost like running a little school for these 4 weeks at these 5 sites. We will have a nurse on staff, we'll have a counselor, office staff, technician, interventionist, ESOL support, special education support as needed. We'll also have our food service staff. As I said, we're partnering with food service, custodial staff, et cetera, and a lead teacher or teachers at all sites that function similarly to the administrator for the camp at that particular site. We also will be providing supplies. Everything the students need to participate will be provided, and then also that transportation, should they need bus transportation to or from camp. So program number 2 is going to run parallel, and that's why it's called the Special Education Parallel Program, to the Pillion Elementary Summer Connections program. And this is going to be a program, actually, let me go back real quick. I want to talk about real quick. The target audience here for our first Summer Connections camp, I forgot to mention because I'm so used to it being tied to Read to Succeed and our rising 4th graders who are at risk of retention. But this year, because of additional funding, we are actually also able to focus in on early intervention and invite rising first, which will be your current kindergartners, as well as rising 2nd graders, which are your current 1st graders that meet specific reading and math criteria. So this camp is criterion-based as far as the invitations and selection criteria, but unlike years past, we are extending the opportunity for that early intervention piece, and then, of course, the piece we are required to do by state law, Act 284.
And the criteria are to identify at-risk kids.
They are to yes, we have a set criteria for how we select students across the district. And then the numbers, though, may be similar to the question that was asked before. It is not equal. It is then equitable in that if you have more kids that meet the criteria, then you have more slots and more opportunity for those students to attend. Does that answer your question, Dr. Powers?
Yeah, but it's to identify kids that maybe didn't progress during the school
Correct.
year
I'm
as
sorry.
expected.
Yes.
To get them up to grade level for the next year.
Yes, as Dr.
Gotcha.
Little mentioned at the beginning, we haven't coined it so, but a recovery camp in that we're trying to recover gaps and fill gaps where kids have had missed, where they have missed experience or content or curriculum. And we're looking really mostly at about a year below grade level. So this camp, unfortunately, funding doesn't allow us to serve every child that has gaps. We do have to set a criteria, and we're at about, we're looking at kids that are about a year below, so that we think in 16 days, we can make some good gains to get them closer to the grade level expectation. So our special ed parallel camp will run the same weeks, same days, same hours, but you will see that this camp will focus on rising kindergarten through rising K through rising fifth. And this is for students who do not qualify based on the criteria of summer connections, nor do they qualify for extended school year, which is, I'll talk about at the end of the slide deck, but do have academic deficits. And a rubric was used for selection of those students. And there will be 100 additional students invited to attend. So the Pillion area will have not only the Summer Connections Camp, but also the 100 students that have been identified through the Special Education Parallel Program. And this is also funded by CARES Act, and you can see the staff that's going to be allotted to this camp and the supplies. They will get the same experience and the same enrichment experience in the afternoon. They will also have access to the same resources and materials that the students in the Summer Connections Camp have, as well as the opportunity for transportation to and from camp.
So we're able to like multiply the number of students we're serving by 11 because of CARES Act funding? Is
Yes.
that why we're, okay.
Correct.
So this is like a one-year kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when Mr. Salters talks about CARES Act are also actually multi-year funds. And so the possibility is that we, could maybe see some of these funds extend, but we're also looking how to maximize intervention and support students fall in next school year and trying to make as much progress as quickly as possible than waiting in a whole nother summer.
Right. So that maybe we wouldn't need to
That
serve
would-
1,100 students.
That would be the hope.
Right.
And typically, Read to Succeed will continue to be, so that those reading camp funds will continue. But yes, this is an opportunity that was provided by CARES Act to be able to intervene with some students who wouldn't typically.
Perfect.
And there is criteria with the CARES Act funds. So again, that goes to Dr. Powers, your question about why we have a selection criteria or what it is. It is directly related to what is outlined in the CARES Act funds of the populations that we were to target in order to provide these services. Now, program number 3, and because I'm doing a comprehensive overview of what's being offered this summer, is not funded by CARES Act. This is a district-funded program, the Immersion Camp program. And so the camp details are here, and that it will run for 1 week, full day, 1 week, Monday through Thursday, our summer weeks. 8 to 4, it'll be Pleasant Hill Elementary School. This is a tuition-based immersion camp with scholarships available for if that is a need. We also have a reduced tuition for siblings who attend, and this focus is on the second language enrichment. So this isn't unlike, or it's not like when they're in immersion during the school year where they have an L1 and an L2 teacher, and they get their math and science in their second language. This is really a camp to focus on that language development, not necessarily the content of science and math. And so most of the staff here will be our L2 or immersion second language teachers.
So, I'm sorry. I
Yep,
have
no,
so
go
many-
ahead, please.
So is
It's
this
easier to
new-
do it by camp than to
Yeah,
wait till
right.
the end.
So is this new or is this something that's been going on?
No, this has been done before.
Okay.
This has been done before, and it is requested out of the general fund by Dr. Liza Speece, but it is a camp that has been running for a number of years. It did not happen last year. It didn't feel like it was the right fit virtually, whereas some of our other camps we were able to do virtually with one-on-one Zoom kind of 30-minute sessions. So this camp did take a hiatus last summer, but it was in place prior to.
And the tuition-based, so if it's funded by the general fund, then what's the tuition for?
That's a great question, and when I made sure to ask Dr. Speece so I could speak to that. So it is most of the funding for all of these camps goes to salaries and staff. And so the funding we wanted to keep at a reasonable amount. And so the general fund plus the tuition funds the required staff necessary as well as the materials. So it's kind of just that they both work together. And they will invite, there are 200 slots for this camp. So we like to keep our numbers small with our teacher to student ratio in these summer camps, so you can see how there's a number of teachers that are needed, and in order to be able to staff that camp, that not only the general fund request, but also the tuition is necessary. All right, so now we'll move on to the secondary focused programs. The first one is the Rising 7th through 9th grade virtual summer connections. And last year we did do a lot of virtual. In fact, we didn't do any face-to-face, but we knew we needed to offer something because we had kids who had less than what we hoped for them in the spring, and we knew we had gaps to fill, and we wanted to provide that opportunity for them to have educational experiences over the summer. And so we did everything virtual last year, and it was very successful. I think even surprised those of us who thought it was going to be a success. It really kind of went beyond what we had hoped for, but especially in our middle grades. And so we decided to keep it that way for middle school. It's easier to get kids to come when they don't have to come to the school building during the summer for a whole day. So these are 30-minute one-on-one sessions with a teacher that the teacher schedules with the student and with the family. And so it's a much more flexible system than what we're doing in our elementary schools. I will tell you, we had success virtually in elementary, but another stipulation of CARES Act is that we had to offer our camp face-to-face. So there were some things that were decided for us when we used CARES Act funding, and then we had a little bit more wiggle room here because as you got into a different age bracket, you were able to make some other decisions. So it is 4 weeks. But this is the one-on-one 30-minute sessions. And the target audience, and I do see a typo, is Rising 6th through 9th, and the other slide said Rising 7th through something less than. So we did add 6th grade because we felt that 5th graders who were going to middle school would be better served from a middle school perspective than going back to their elementary school or an elementary feeder to have a camp experience. So it's an opportunity to kind of get their feet wet a little bit with some middle school teachers and the expectations, but also give them that opportunity to fill those gaps before they go. I thought you were poised for a question, Dr. Little.
Well, I'm sorry, I am. Will you just, again, talk one more second about the comparison for what the virtual camp and the one-on-one sessions, what we noticed last year in that reading camp, and really just say that one more time. I think that's an important part because this was actually truly a surprise to everybody. I mean, I was very skeptical of the plan moving into it. Dr. Talley knows that, and I had to apologize to Dr. Talley for how incredible the kids performed.
Well, I mean.
And Dr. Talley loved that, didn't she?
That's right, absolutely.
She still talks about
Absolutely.
it. She brought it
That's
up
right.
today, actually. No, I'm kidding. You know, one-on-one has its benefits. And though virtual, sometimes we think, you know, maybe it's not up to par, it has a place. And what teachers and even our Lula Academy have found is that a virtual environment is a wonderful place to do small group instruction and one-on-one instruction. And that's exactly what we were able to see happen in our summer virtual programs. When you are with a child one-on-one for 30 minutes and able to really target in on his or her skill deficits and be able to give and provide intervention to be able to shore up those deficits, you know, the outcomes are just going to be through the roof. And that's what we saw. We also had great attendance because it's a more flexible schedule. It's really hard in the summer to have a family commit to 4 weeks when they already have a beach trip scheduled for 1 week. And when you think about 4 weeks, 4 days. That's really only 16 days that we have the kids. It feels like forever. 4 weeks feels like forever during the summer, but it's only 16 days. We were able to really capitalize on what's your 30 minutes every week that works for you. And they were there every time for their 30 minutes, uninterrupted, and so the attendance was really good. One thing that we suffer with a lot in our face-to-face summer camps is attendance. If you're not there, you're not getting the intervention, and we really didn't have a way to make that up. And so I think those are two reasons, the one-on-one and the flexibility and families committing to it because they could do it from anywhere. So even if they were on vacation for a week, they still logged on for their 30-minute session. We just really had great gains from this type of camp experience. And I think we've seen a lot of that in our online experience for those who have committed to and understand what the expectations were in that process as well.
Dr. Bissell, I wanted to say, I think that's a good idea to have the rising sixth graders participate in the middle school, because rising sixth graders, if going to their elementary school, that feels like retention.
Yeah.
And they're done with elementary school when they're done with fifth grade, and so I think that was a very good choice.
I appreciate that, and I'll pass it along to those that really push for that decision, because I think you're right, that is the right place for them to be, and it's a great opportunity. And I think in the future we want to think about having more of those bridging opportunities so kids can have and get their feet wet in that new experience, and maybe even in the building, but right now even getting to know familiar faces is going to be a huge step. So I mentioned that ESSER was mostly focused on the face-to-face instruction, but we were able to, because of the age and the group that we were focusing on here, we were still able to fund this camp with the CARES Act. But in the elementary school, there was a specific stipulation that it needed to be face-to-face.
And
All
then,
right, go ahead.
and is
sorry.
that criteria-based like the elementary school? Or
Yes.
is that driven by parents or students' interest?
The middle school virtual camp is still driven criteria-based.
Criteria, okay.
Mhm. So you still have to meet the population and the criteria requirements. All right, and so then we go to secondary special education opportunity, and this will be a face-to-face camp, and this will be run at Pleasant Hill Middle School from 8:15 to 11:45. And this is rising 7th through 12th grade students, because again, we talked about the parallel program, with IEPs who have shown unsatisfactory progress towards their goals and or disengaged from learning, and are not eligible for the camp I just talked about, or ESY, which is extended school year. And this camp will be staffed by special education teachers, and with specific designations for the students who will be attending the camp. And you can see here the funding source as well as how that money is being used.
Dr. Bissell,
Yes.
this is Jada. I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a face-to-face opportunity for rising sixth graders who don't qualify for the K-5 summer connections or the extended school year, but that they have academic deficits?
And that don't have an IEP?
Correct.
There is not.
Okay.
So if they meet the criteria for the rising 6th through 9th, the option is virtual.
Okay.
And then if they have the IEP, then that will be face-to-face. And then the ESY is going to be blended.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a good question, and one that's coming up a lot. And I will tell you honestly, we're having some staffing struggles. And, I think we would love to offer everything for everybody, and we're just having to make some real tough decisions.
Erica, could you just state for the public what ESY stands for?
Yes, extended school year, and I'll go over that, the criteria for that experience at the end of the presentation.
Dr. Bissell, are because as you've been going through this, with all the various camp offerings, which is amazing, what kept occurring to me is that it is going to require robust staffing. And I was just curious, is that staffing just current Lexington One employees?
Great question.
Because, there are probably some retirees that
Yes.
would want to help.
Yes, that's a great question. So we did start with our current staff, and we have had an interest form, and we got our principals ready to kind of pitch the idea. We had a one-pager of, if this is the camp you're interested in here, click here. If this is the camp, click here. So we had that. We then went to new hires, which is going to be a phenomenal opportunity. Some of them have been interns in our schools, so we're familiar with them, and we knew that they had signed a contract, and so they were ready and willing to work in some of our camps. We also, to your point about retirees, we have some retirees who've been in the building as long-term subs this year. When they were part of the interest form, they had the opportunity, and we were encouraged to fill out the interest form. And then we also worked with Human Resources to post to some social media with a specific heading of retirees, new hires, areas of need. You're welcome to let us know if you're interested in this experience. So yes, we really do feel like we beat the bushes to try to find anybody and everybody who wanted to work. One thing I didn't mention, the camps that are funded with CARES Act, and Ms. Henson, you mentioned it, is that we have this opportunity with an increase in funding. We are able to pay a daily rate of pay, which is huge for some of these camps. We typically pay an hourly rate that is just a flat rate. And so our camps that are district funded or that are not part of the CARES Act funding are going to continue with that rate, and that will be our norm going forward. And we've been very clear, this is one time only, fabulous opportunity. But that has been a great draw because, that's a big part of it is if I have to get childcare and I'm working, what's the trade-off here? So that has been a great draw, but it has also been a great large expenditure, which Mr. Salters will talk about shortly. The staffing is huge, but great question. And we do think we have, and what's awesome, and I say this every year with camp, is we have great teachers, but our great teachers, they want to come work camp too. Like they don't shy away from the opportunity. So it's really exciting. The struggles come with a vacation plan. This was already predetermined. And we really try to keep with consistency for camp for kids. So we do ask that they commit for the 4 weeks if at all possible. And sometimes that can lead to a lot of scheduling conflicts and folks who aren't able to commit. Program number 3 is music camp. That's really not its name, but that's the best definition for it right now. And the camp details and target audience, this will run for 1 week. Students in grades 6 through 8. Registration will occur after spring break and allows students to participate from middle school levels in the areas of band, chorus, and orchestra. And this will be offered at no charge to student. And this is also something that's coming out of the general fund and has been budgeted accordingly. And approximately 300 students will participate in this opportunity. All right, and you'll see the staffing there. And then we have some K-12 summer opportunities. So the first one is the Rising Stars virtual camp, and this camp is targeted for our McKinney-Vento students at risk, and our multilingual learners who are new to the United States, who we affectionately call our newcomers. And so this camp is overseen by Alma Ruiz, and it's academic and emotional focus. She runs this every year, and it is funded by multiple sources, multiple funding sources, and it is, she has found, and she found based on last year, if we want to go back to what Dr. Little highlighted from last year, she ran this camp virtually, had such great success, she decided to go from face-to-face 2 years ago, forced really, we had to make the decision to go virtual last year, and it was so successful, she said, because her funding isn't stipulated the way the others are, she will continue virtual this year. So I do think, that speaks when sometimes we have to make decisions because we have to make decisions, but she saw the success and decided to continue in that way on her own accord to make that decision. And something to note about kids who will participate virtually, they will be provided and will have access to their device and a hotspot if needed. And so we are working with IT and a wonderful collaboration to make sure that there is no interruption so that there's not a big hassle with them having to turn it in and get it back out and all the things. They will have everything that they need. And even in face-to-face, they will have their device because, again, we've gotten so accustomed to being able to be multimodal, even within our face-to-face classrooms with our one-to-one technology. And this is the funding, how the funding will be allocated for the Rising Stars camp. And then, similarly to Miss Alma's camp, Dr. Chris Gillespie, who usually runs a camp alongside my summer reading camp with her ESOL Summer Connections, she will also run a fully virtual camp because she can serve more students because 30-minute rotations, one-on-one with a teacher, she's able to just partner more teachers and assign them to more students. And so this will be rising 1st through 12th grade, approximately 80 elementary students and 50 middle and high school students. And students will receive several at-home resources, learning kit to include books and other materials. And this is funded by Title III, which are federal funds related to students of multilingual learners. And then finally, ESY, which is extended school year, which has been around a long time, and it's part of a special education programming. And our IEP teams determine the eligibility for ESY. COVID is not a reason, so again, we have to really distinguish between why the gaps exist, and this year and the uniqueness of it is not a reason for a student to be a candidate for ESY, and really not a candidate to be alone to be a candidate for any of our other camps. It has to be data-driven. And then this will be virtual and face-to-face options available. Ms. Garris, to your point, this is one camp where they do have the opportunity and staff to be able to provide both modalities, and ESY is funded through IDEA federal funds. I'm clicking, and you'll all be glad I don't have any more slides. So epic, robust, I don't know what you want to call it, but we are excited about our summer programming opportunities. We are excited about all of the collaboration that is taking place. I mean, it runs from transportation to operations to instructional technology to information technology to food service to our custodial staff, our building principals, our teachers, and most importantly, our families. So it's exciting, and I hope to return at the end of the summer with just outstanding results to share. Any questions?
So something for consideration. I think this is important and key to identify the kids that didn't move through the standards at a pace that they would have in a non-COVID year. I think all of our kids, however, have had some of that. And so as our teachers finish the year, it would be very nice, in addition to the year-end grades, to say, for example, I've got a daughter at Beechwood in Algebra 1. And so that teacher kind of knows where students should be at the end of their 7th grade year in Algebra 1. And she knows where my daughter hasn't achieved in certain areas, like a typical student would, to help steer parents who want to drive, to Khan Academy or whatever the tool is that we want to use for self-directed work through the summer to close those gaps, because obviously we can't, cover our whole school district through the summer. So again,
Wonderful
I
recommendation.
think these resources are being assigned appropriately,
Yes.
but I think also there's parents out there who, for kids that don't meet these criteria, want to continue to augment through the summer to be ready for next calendar year.
Yes,
So.
thank you for that. I'll take that back. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bissell.
Thank you very
Wonderful, wonderful job, and for speaking to a number of camps that you're not actually in charge of. So thank you for that. We appreciate that. All right, so I guess we started with the good news, and now we've got to talk about then the funding associated with it, because you did notice the significant amount of funding, as Ms. Green mentioned, the significant amount of days and what that looks like, and at the same time being able to attract a teaching force who is also pretty tired and exhausted from the year that we've had, and I think everybody's a bit tired as well. And so we've had to attract and recruit those teachers as well to extend the school year and expand the school year and to spend their summertime with us. So, Mr. Salters, if you want to kind of walk through where we are and kind of talk about those timelines about what's to come and what we still have remaining and those kinds of things associated with the CRF and some of the other things.
Sure. So I'll start out just to give you a brief summary and just remind the board that in your board packet, you have a pretty extensive document, or multiple documents actually, that make up the different plans that have been submitted to the State Department of Education for the expenditures of these funds. And then and we'll have future plans available as well as those funds are dispersed. We started out with, there are really 3 different allocations of funding that have come about, and you hear terms CARES, you hear CRF, you hear ESSER, you hear all these different terms, and so I felt like it was very important that we kind of set the record straight, if you will, or give you a reference guide at least that you could refer back to as these things are talked about for what they mean. ESSER 1 was the first allocation of funding, or the CARES Act, Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security is what CARES stands for. That was in March, or spring of 2020, $30.75 billion. ESSER, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, is what that references as well. So as an allocation for that, the CARES Act, or ESSER 1, as we call it, we received a total allocation of $3,008,241. That grant expires on September 30th of 2022. You'll hear me reference these things as grants. These are special revenue funds, and I'd be remiss really if I didn't take a second to tell you that the ladies who have done just yeoman's work keeping up with this and following it are sitting here tonight, and that's Donna Patton and Jessica Bazard are both here, and they've just spent hours and hours and hours coordinating meetings with different subgroups of folks to talk about and put plans together. Dr. Talley and I have been involved in much of that work as well, but really they've done just tremendous work organizing this effort for us. The first grant, as I mentioned, September 30th, 22 is when it expires. There were set out 12 allowable areas for use of the funds. You heard Dr. Bissell say several times that the CARES Act doesn't allow us to do that. Well, there were certain guidelines related to that. And so what I'm showing you here is a summary of funding in each category. And then in your board package, you have a description, a more detailed description of what those funds were used for in that category. So basically in ESSER 1, Category 1, really special needs category, we allocated or budgeted $147,806. And then in categories 2 through 5, you see zeros. There was no funding committed to those categories. And then going on to 6, there was nothing budgeted there. But then 7, cleaning supplies for schools. There was a $120,000 budgeted there. And then the bulk of this grant was in Category 9, and that's for purchasing educational technology. We had, as we've mentioned in previous meetings, a technology gap for some of our primarily elementary level students that we needed to close very quickly to be able to transition to online learning. And so these funds were available to be able to do that with. And then we also, Category 12 is referenced in sometimes as kind of a catch-all category. Basically, it was any other activity to ensure continuity of education and employment. So you'll see things like PPE expenditures, things like that show up in that category of this grant.
Okay, just a quick question.
Yes.
These 12 allowable areas for this grant, who chose which categories? Were those told to us as a district, or did
No.
the district decide?
So there were 12 categories set out by the federal government.
Right.
And then the district decided what expenditures we would make and then classified those into the categories.
Okay.
Is that your question?
Yes, so we
determined,
decided.
for example, we determined that we needed, we had a technology gap
Correct.
at the elementary level, and so we needed to buy a number of devices to close that gap, and so we put that money, budgeted that money in our plan in Category 9.
Okay.
That plan was then submitted to the State Department to make sure that it met the, obviously the criteria for that category and approved by the State Department.
Okay.
Mr. Salters, when you talk about the technology gap that exists, was that due to financial gap, or was that due to, obviously there's a lot of projects and things going on. Is it just focused attention? What do we think was the cause of the gap that existed there?
I think what basically, and Dr. Talley, you may want to weigh in on this as well, but basically what it was strategy that we had taken, that in our lower grades, we weren't one-to-one.
Right.
And so what we determined, obviously, when you started going virtual, and students were learning from home, we needed to be one-to-one. And so we had to close that gap pretty quickly. In a normal environment, I think our, Dr. Lowell, you may want to say your philosophy on this, but our normal environment, our instructional strategy is not to be one-to-one at those lower grade levels. And so what we learned very quickly, obviously, is that those kids needed a device, and so we had to close that gap. So it was more of a, it was more of an intentional decision.
Yeah, it was more philosophy. What we tried to do was pre-pandemic, and of course, certainly if we'd known the pandemic was coming, we would have had a different philosophy associated with it. But pre-pandemic, it was really about, we wanted tech-rich environments, but we also knew that, say, kindergartners, for example, and Dr. Bissell, I think, can express this too, is that as we're doing a lot of our reading instruction, that's not necessarily device-based. That's, there's a lot of hands-on, there's a lot of tactile work, there's a lot of collaboration and group work. Now faced with the realities of the pandemic, that certainly had to change. And I think we've learned a lot in that as well. And I think that philosophy has evolved where we have a better sense of how technology can be utilized in those moments that are still developmentally correct and that still allow us to advance the same, and maybe sometimes there's some efficiencies associated with the technology as well. But again, it was a philosophical perspective of let's have a tech-rich environment. I think K through 3, I think was the number. We had mainly 5 through 12. I think maybe we dropped down to 4 through 12, that kind of thing.
So if it kind of forced us into I guess a philosophical discussion of evaluation, and we have since transitioned from that, I assume that's probably a horse we're not getting back in the barn, per se, if there's a philosophical shift. And so I guess my question would be, this technology obviously has a finite lifetime to it. So when you looked at, saying, spending $2 million today, how does that translate 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, as we start to see this technology change and roll off, and we start to look at replacement? Obviously, we may still have the philosophy and the need, but we might not have the funding, if you will, or at least the funding excess that we saw.
Right. Well, I think what you're kind of touching on here is really a greater point with any of these expenditures, is that you have what I consider a funding cliff, and depending on when the grant runs out is when that cliff happens. Mm-hmm. And so we had some serious conversation about, hey, we're going to go out and spend $2 million now. How are we going to be able to in 5 years? Because as you say, the horse has left the barn. How are we going to be able to replace that? And so we've had some conversations about our overall replacement strategy. We touched on this, I think, at one of our previous board meetings. And we have a plan in place that we're prepared to talk with the board about in an upcoming meeting about how to refresh that technology over a kind of a regular life cycle going forward, and these devices will be included in that life cycle.
Okay, good. So that consideration was already given as a part of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it does highlight a very good point about that funding cliff, and there are some areas where we will have those real conversations down the road. With there are some FTE that we're funding in these, and we understand that those FTE are either going to have to be transferred through attrition over to the general fund over the next few years, or those FTE are going to end when the grant runs out.
Sure. Thank you.
Great question. So just a summary briefly of this particular grant. Again, we had a total allocation at roughly $3 million. We've spent $1.5 million, have some encumbrances sitting out there. So really a little over $1.5 million has been obligated. And we have the $1.48 million that's still budgeted and will be spent within the guidelines of the termination date. Moving on to the second batch of funding, because it just seems that we can make it more confusing. So we have CRF and not CARES or something. We just threw another name out there. But this is a second batch of funding which really landed kind of unexpectedly to us in the fall of this past year, and it resulted in some as a leftover amount of money that the state allocation the state had received. So with that allocation to the district, we got some $2.5 million in CRF money, as we call it. That grant expires December 30th of this year, so the deadline on it is obviously sooner. And with this funding, there were 4 allowable categories for the use of the funds. School safety measures, school nurse services, tutoring, supplemental and support services, and then technology purchases for online learning. And so the CRF money, we did purchase some PPE out of those funds. And what happened in some cases, we purchased some items out of general fund. And then when we received these funds, we were able to go back and claim those purchases and offset our general fund cost. So that's helped our overall general fund budget. So,
Mr. Salters, if I can,
Yes, sir.
'cause I think it's important when people work hard on our behalf to give them a lot of credit. This was, Representative Wooten had a lot to do with this, and his dogged determination and continuing follow-up with the governor's office really helped us do that part of it. And I'd like to publicly thank him for his efforts, because that really made a big difference for us when it allowed us that we had already purchased some of the things, and then they allowed us to go back and claim some of that. So that was very helpful, and we appreciate his work and effort on our behalf.
yeah, we were very proactive in setting up procurement, bids and things to make purchases for masks and other PPE, and made purchases in advance of knowing these funds existed, and did that out of our general fund so that we could be prepared for the opening of the school year. And as Dr. Lowe mentioned, Representative Wooten was instrumental in getting these funds to us so that we could go back and offset some of those expenditures. So it's really very helpful. In summary, again, $2.5 million. We've spent 1.4 of that, and we have an additional encumbrance there. So about 1.8 million has been committed, and we have a remaining balance that's been budgeted of 628,000. So, and that, we don't anticipate any issues with meeting the deadline for exhausting those funds as well. I'll just say in the winter, late December, early January, ESSER 2 came about, and so at least we got to use the same acronym and just add a number. And so that was an allocation to the district. This is the largest allocation we've received. This is a $12.1 million allocation to the district, and the grant expires September 30th of 2023. And as you see, this is a larger grant, and the window of spending is extended another year, and so therefore we have a little more time where we can put if we have some FTE in here, those FTE will be covered over that through the life cycle of that grant. So it really allows you some additional flexibility because of the extended time frame. The categories were expanded to 15 categories. Categories 1 through 11 are exactly the same as ESSER 1. And then category 15, the kind of catch-all category, is also the same. It got pushed, and then they inserted 12, 13, and 14. And so, again, we have some allocations broken down. The first one, as I mentioned, is the same, special needs areas. And so the team went through and identified a lot of general fund expenditures that we were going to be purchasing, whether it be software, whether it be, we had a presentation on Avid earlier, some of those types of purchases. All of these things we went through and tried to identify to maximize our usage of these funds, and also help our general fund budget as well. And so this fund, or this plan, has been submitted to the State Department. Right, I guess it got submitted right before we went on spring break, and so it hasn't been approved yet, but we anticipate approval here very shortly. You'll notice there is some mental health supports. That's a focus. We talked a lot about summer learning. You see a big $1.2 million expenditure there, but there's additional learning and catch up throughout each of these different funding streams, and so that was a real focus and priority of the group. Learning loss is a big element of this ESSER 2, and so we focused our funds there. Two of the categories that were added were related to facility repairs and indoor air quality, any issues related to that in schools. And so we felt like, because we have an active bond referendum capital improvement program in place right now that addresses a number of those needs, we felt like we needed to use these funds to focus on our learning loss and our technology associated with that, and so that's where the bulk of the funding is located, and we didn't put any money in those two categories. So again, ESSER 2, we don't have any expenditures at this point because our plan is still pending approval from the state, and once that gets approved, we'll obviously begin making some efforts to use that money.
Mr. Salters?
Yes.
I know you said the plan is being approved, and some of the grants that I'm used to working with, you have this plan, but how fluid is this? Like, if we realize, we've got $8 million allocated in this one number, but we want to spend $1 million of that in another category, as long as it falls under that umbrella, do we have to resubmit a plan, or can
we do plan amendments? Yeah, you submit a plan amendment, and it gets approved.
2023, we might.
That's right.
say-
There's a lot
Yeah.
that can happen between now and 2023. That's a great point. So you can make modifications, and we've actually had to do some of that already with some of the expenditures. So there is some flexibility to do that as long as it meets the guidelines. And I will, so this was it's $17,652,984 that we've received at this point. I did want to point out that that we do submit these plans, and they're approved at the state level. There's also state level auditing to make sure that expenditures meet the guidelines that the federal government intended for us to spend the expenditures with. And there is obviously also local auditing. As you're aware, we go through an independent audit every year for our funds, and our independent auditors look at our special revenue accounts and do audits of those funds as well. So to make sure that those funds are being spent appropriately based on the guidelines of the grants that they're targeted from. So just wanted to point that out as we go forward. So again, that's a general summary. ESSER 3, we haven't gotten quite there yet, but ESSER 3 has passed on March 11th. And so that's a very large allocation of funding. We don't have an amount yet as to what that's going to be for our district. We've heard through some different sources that it could be as much as 2 times our ESSER 2 amount, so potentially $24 or so million. And so we're not sure yet. We anticipate the guidelines and the amount to be publicized here in the next few weeks or so. And so then we would start, and we also anticipate there being very similar guidelines, but we won't know that until they're obviously published. And we'll obviously keep you guys informed as we go forward with that. but that'll be another, large expenditure. And, I think, Mr. Stacy has mentioned before, one of the things that we had looked at is potentially trying to offset some of our student-teacher ratios by incorporating some additional teaching FTE into that grant. Again, that goes back to, if you do that, you do create a potential funding cliff in a few years, where those teachers would have to move into general fund, or you just don't bring them back on through attrition or whatever. But those are things that we will have conversations about, obviously, when we know more details. So any questions I can answer for you related to the funding that's been distributed so far?
I just have a couple. This is Jada. I noticed in one of them, there's vision screeners and things like that. So you can submit receipts for items like that. But on one of them, there is expanding adult ed and family literacy. So do y'all have to go back and report to the State Department of Education and show how you expanded?
Well, they audit the funds. So, and we have to, provide, when they do that audit, we have to provide all the documentation about what we did. So, yes.
Right. Yeah, so it says, by purchasing instructional supplies and materials to support the program. So you'll have to show receipts for that. But as far as the expansion, will they ask, how did you expand this? Give us some examples.
I mean, sure, they can. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Also, in one of them, it says that there will be tutoring for after school. When will that begin? I'm sure that's for probably Dr. Bissell or Ms. Bizarre. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Mr. Salters, I appreciate that you and your staff and all of our district leadership, that there's such a sense of responsibility and anticipating the future and the funding cliffs and making sure that we use these funds wisely and well now, but also so that we're not putting ourselves in jeopardy in the future. I mean, these are huge pots of money. And I mean, ESSER 2 and now what you're talking about, ESSER 3, I can't help but picture Violet Beauregard from Willy Wonka, where she eats so much, she turns into the grape and rolls away. I mean, you can see how careful planning and attention to being responsible, even in the face of basically unimaginable money falling in our laps. And I just really appreciate the work that everyone has done to steward the money that we've received and the planning that you're doing to make sure that we use the money that we're going to receive well to help our students and our staff. So thank you.
Appreciate that. And there's clearly a need. I mean, you can just see from Dr. Bissell's presentation, the summer camps and the focus on, trying to address the learning loss. So we're excited about, future allocations to be able to continue to expand our offerings associated with that, and hopefully be able to do that over multiple summers and or throughout the course of the school year.
It kind of makes you imagine a little bit what we could do if our schools and education system were always well-funded.
Right.
Well, and it may be good for the budget process if we have a Gantt chart for more than 1 or 2 years out of where those cliffs will happen. Because again, what we also can't do for the taxpayers is yo-yo millage, up and down.
Oh, right.
So, because that's not fair
Right.
to our businesses in the community. So
That's right.
again, thinking about a longer horizon on those millage decisions with respect to future funding, I think would be good for us.
Right. And some of the things that we're looking at, we've talked about, some of these things are short-term mediation strategies, and hopefully once we use them, we won't need them again, and so they can go away. And so we'll use the funding for a purpose and then not have to replace that funding at some point. Where you get into tricky situations, you reduce student-teacher ratios, significantly, and use these funds to do that, and then 3 years from now you have to all of a sudden come up with a big millage increase to support that continued ratio. So we just have to be careful about those things.
But you can also make an argument for the next couple of years, we need those reduced.
You need the impact. That's right.
And then again, as budget
You can
things
just ease
require,
it
because
off.
the budget's got to be balanced.
That's
You could
right.
slowly
Ease it
grow
off.
them again.
That's right.
None of us want to do that, but
Right.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Salters. Well, we will stay with you, and we will do our monthly operations update.
All right. All right, we'll start at the new Lexington Middle School site. We're going to update our slide next month since we have Lakeside Middle School now. And you'll see significant progress happening at this site. Very pleased with what's going on there. You can see from the aerial photo, we have our classroom wings established now. Again, this is the prototype middle school that we built at Beechwood and at Pelion Middle School. We have a good portion of the building under permanent roof, so the black here, and then you have the white cap sheet roof here. So we're in great shape. Our auditorium area is coming out of the ground now. The gymnasium will be in this area here. We've already started with footings and slab for the dance room and things like that associated with that area. So it's another view kind of from the courtyard. So you're kind of, this is the cafeteria looking back into the courtyard. This is the library and the main office area here. And this would be the auditorium space. Just a closer shot of those spaces. And then this is, you're looking at the front of the site. So Old Cherokee Road is here. And this is will be the main student and parent entrance. And then this is the service entrance and bus entrance over here on this side. And so there will be a playfield located here. Currently, they've started excavation for the underground storm detention system. That's what these pipes are, and that will come across here, and then this road will be built. This is the front elevation of the school looking at the main office area. Inside the main office area, we've got walls going up and getting close to getting some sheetrock on those. This is looking in the main center commons area. You'll recognize the main staircase and the library over to the right. And then this is looking from that catwalk up there, looking back out to the main entrance. And that area usually gets built last just so they can get heavy equipment in and out. Classroom rings will be on the right. The main office area is right here just for orientation. This is the cafeteria space. And we got our serving lines really taking shape there. Closer look, we got the hood set, which is kind of a big milestone, and the cooler freezers are installed as well. Actually, there's tile on the walls here. It's a little hard to see, and they've actually tiled the floor and have it protected as well. There's a better shot of the cooler freezers. You can see some of that tile on the walls there. This is the rear of the loading dock area. This has been poured. And this is obviously the service area for custodial receiving and also food service. And then you're looking at the, ultimately this will be the proscenium opening for the stage, and this will be dug out for the auditorium seats. Moving on to White Knoll High School, our 32 classroom addition here, is out there for the vaccine clinic right before the break, and it's really great to see how this is merged into the existing campus. It looks like it was always there, but this addition is really coming together nicely off the front of the school there, and it's dried in. We've got some HVAC units going in, and they're doing some clean up and dress up around the outside of the building. Interior space, there's a main stairwell kind of in the middle of the building, and this is a seating lecture area, kind of multi-purpose area in that space. It's kind of another look at it. It's right in the kind of the corner of that main hallway there. But you can see there, we actually have an overhead inspection there tomorrow, and then they'll be able to start dropping ceiling tile once that inspection is cleared. And so we're really making good progress with that space. On the other side of the campus, so the main addition is over here for the classrooms. Front office is here. This is the Performing Arts Theater. And you can see this is the big fly loft area that we have at Lexington High School and River Bluff High School for those sets to be flown up and changed out quickly. And so you see the seating area is taking shape. This again will be a 1,000-seat performing arts theater, just like those two schools. And there's some additional classroom spaces in the repurposed theater space in the back. It's just kind of a ground level shot of that tall wall there. And then just, looking in that theater space, you can see the walls coming up there to the bearing heights. So a lot of good work going on there. And then at Gilbert High School, we started our performing arts theater there. Didn't have the greatest day to take pictures for that site, so it's a little hard to even see what we've got here. But this is the main school. This is your competition gym and practice gym back here. And this is the area where the performing arts theater will be. And actually today, they've started digging some footings and gotten some of the preliminary underground plumbing work done. And so we should see a lot of progress really kicking in there over the next month. So hopefully you'll see a lot of changes in the next set of pictures. You're looking at the student parking lot area over here. That's kind of the orientation. And then of course the softball complex and baseball and stuff is up the hill on the back side there. And that's the softball field right there, just to kind of give you an orientation. That's the practice field if you're familiar with that area. So a lot of prep work has gone on this month there with storm detention and things like that, but we'll start seeing some actual building work done over the next month. So we're excited about that opportunity. As always, you can track our progress of the building plan on our website, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I know we'll continue to talk about this as the new middle schools finish, Lexington Middle School, but I think all of us on the board, one of the things that keeps us up at night is school safety. And after, when the current Lexington Middle School was built, again, the world was different. So seeing that campus from an aerial view and the amount of security and safety that we're going to have for those students is very exciting. So again, thank you and our architectural firms, construction management firms for keeping our kids' safety top of mind.
Thank you.
That's all I got. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Moving on to 11.0, which is adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Madam Chair, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. If you don't second, we stay here all night. No. All in favor, please stand up and go home.
Good, yeah.